Aside from being one of the richest criminals in history, Pablo Escobar was also a very callous man and is probably the father of narco-terrorism. As you probably already know, the most common thing among terrorists is the ability to kill, create terror, and kill some more. Pablo Escobar was a man who understood power and violence, so he had men at his beck and call who would do anything he asked, no matter how gruesome, and one of those men was John Jairo Velázquez Vázquez. In today's video, we will take a look at John Jairo Velázquez Vázquez, a man who spent a major part of his life committing murders for Pablo Escobar. John Jairo Velázquez Vázquez, popularly known as Popeye, is regarded as Pablo Escobar's most feared hitman. If you're wondering how he got that title, keep watching this video as we unveil his life and murder history. At the start of it all, John Jairo Velázquez Vázquez was born on April 15, 1962, in a small town called Yarumal in Colombia. For what it's worth, John Jairo was born into a normal family with a normal life. At birth, he had no connections to cartels or drug lords. However, this privilege didn't stop John from having a strong affinity for guns and, by extension, violence. At the age of 12, John's family moved to Medellin, where he soon joined the Colombian National Army, probably to exploit his love for violence. Whichever the case, John's stay in the army was rather brief because after a few months, he left and joined the Colombian National Navy. During his time in the Navy, Velázquez earned the nickname Popeye because he was said to look like the cartoon character. Young Velázquez must have hated the name so much that he underwent surgery to remove his resemblance to the character. But once a nickname sticks, it stays for life. Velázquez stayed with the Navy for a short while, and by the time he was 16, he was on the streets hustling. If you're familiar with the cartels of Mexico, then you probably already know that the streets of Medellin are a breeding ground for all sorts of criminals and would-be cartel members. That said, it's easy to see why it took only a short while for Velázquez to come in contact with the Medellin cartel. At the age of 17, Velázquez wasn't just recruited by ordinary cartel members, he was recruited by Pablo Escobar himself. Velázquez's career as a man of the underworld started as soon as he met Escobar. His first mission was to kill a bus driver who had hit and killed the mother of another gunman that worked for Escobar. In an interview, Popeye described how he felt the first time he met the king of drug lords. He said, "It was like I had seen a god. He had this huge presence, like an aura around him. He had incredible magnetism, but was exaggeratedly plain. The day I looked in Pablo Escobar's eyes, I knew there and then I would die for him if need be." A 17-year-old who is ready to die for another man is definitely not a normal teenager. And Popeye proved it because it is uncanny for a teenager to kill a man in cold blood and still be willing to serve such a cause with his life. Escobar must have noticed Popeye's love for violence because after his first mission turned out to be a success, Escobar decided to pull him closer to himself than other gunmen. Popeye was trained firsthand by the king of all drug lords himself to become a killing machine without a heart. One night, while in bed with his girlfriend Wendy Chavarriaga Gil, who used to be Pablo Escobar's lover, Velázquez got a call from his boss. Escobar said just two words, "Plato o plomo," meaning money or death. Right there, Velázquez knew what he would choose. Hold on, let's bring you up to speed on some basic history. So Wendy was Escobar's ex-girlfriend who broke his #1 rule, which is never get pregnant. When Escobar learned that she was pregnant, he forced her to terminate the baby. That ended their relationship. Popeye, who didn't know about all this, met Wendy one evening at a bar and ended up in Wendy's bed. Now, fast forward to after the phone call. Popeye's loyalty to Escobar was so great that the next morning he went straight to his boss to give him all the details of his escapade. Escobar didn't make a fuss. In fact, he was okay with it, but he didn't fail to tell Popeye that Wendy was the type of woman that loved rich drug lords who could spoil her. Popeye was already blind in love and wasn't ready to listen, so he kept on seeing Wendy. A little while later, things seemed to be on the edge of turning sour because Escobar found out that Wendy was using Popeye as a means to get revenge on him for making her lose her baby. He also discovered that she had become an informant for a police group whose objective was to bring him down. Armed with this new information, Escobar called Popeye and asked him to choose. Popeye made what Escobar would call the right choice even though it meant he would lose his girlfriend. And when I say lose, I don't mean he would end the relationship. I mean he let 2 other hitmen put bullets in Wendy's head without regret. Shortly after she was assassinated, Velasquez drove past the scene to inspect his ex-girlfriend's body, lying lifeless in a pool of her blood on the floor of a cafe. It was almost as if he wanted to be sure that the job was well done. When Popeye was arrested in 1992, he confessed to the murder of 257 people and his involvement in the murder of over 3,000 people, including 500 police officers. If we were to spread the murder of 257 people from the time he started working for Escobar till the time he was arrested, Velasquez would have killed about 19 people every year. Mind you, these exclude every other killing he either planned or ordered. These alarming numbers only go to show how much twisted satisfaction Popeye got from wasting lives. He had no conscience, hence, he didn't need drugs or alcohol to drown his evil doings. Popeye's most famous killings were the murders of presidential candidate Luis Carlos Galan, Carlos Mato Hoyos, a politician who was in competition with Escobar, and the Avianca plane bombing. Galan was killed because he had planned to sign an extradition treaty with the US if he was elected as president. Unfortunately, his political aspirations were cut short before he could become president, not to mention signing the treaty. The Avianca bombing may have been overseen by Popeye, but it was orchestrated by Escobar and the Medellin cartel. The jetliner traveling from Bogota to Cali had 107 people on board. It is said that Cesar Gaviria, another presidential candidate, was the target of the bombing, but fortunately for him, he canceled his trip last minute. In an interview with Daily Beast, Popeye stated that the bomb was in a briefcase and it was a work of art. According to him, the cartel had persuaded an unsuspecting youth to open the briefcase during the flight. He was told that the case would be used to record a passenger's conversation during the flight. Unknown to him, opening the case meant triggering the bomb and killing the 107 passengers on board and 3 people on the ground. The Medellin cartel went through such trouble because they were bent on eliminating any politician who showed signs of willingness to sign an extradition treaty with the US. As he spoke to Daily Beast, Popeye said, "We were all aware that if the bomb exploded in the wrong place, it would ignite the plane's fuel tanks and the captain could save the plane. So we created a domino effect with the fuel stored in the wings of the plane, the dynamite in the briefcase, and the pressurization of the aircraft, a lethal composition." He also said that the mastermind behind the bombing was Carlos Castaño, who later became an enemy of Escobar. As horrifying as it all sounds, the plane bombing is not the only bombing Popeye was involved in. He also admitted that he was involved in roughly 200 car bombs against rival cartels and Colombian authorities. In 1992, Popeye was charged with drug trafficking, extortion, terrorism, conspiracy for terrorist purposes, and murder. For his crimes, he was sentenced to 30 years in prison. As you would expect, many people were furious at the sentence because it seemed too short for a devil like Popeye. To further back up this claim, there are numerous records of people who have gotten life sentences for committing less severe crimes than the one Popeye committed. Seeing how he got off with minimum punishment, one would think Popeye would serve his time quietly, but of course, the opposite was the case. The convicted criminal always had a knack for violence, so it didn't come as a shock when he got involved in armed clashes at the La Modelo prison between 2000 and 2001. In 2008, Popeye was sentenced to another 12 years in prison for other crimes he committed. In August 2014, after spending 23 years in prison, 52-year-old Popeye was released on probation because he had given the police information that helped in bringing down Escobar. Now, while other ex-cartel convicts get out of prison and live the rest of their lives quietly and away from cartel attention, Popeye wouldn't be Popeye if he didn't gather attention to himself. To launch his attention-grabbing campaign, Popeye started the YouTube channel Popeye Arrepentido, which translates to Remorseful Popeye, and became famous for posting videos and granting interviews to anyone who wanted first-hand stories of the crimes he committed while working for the greatest drug lord to live on Earth. In most of his videos, Popeye discussed and criticized many topics about Colombia, its corrupt government, and the socio-economic status of the country. His videos, of course, angered the family members of his victims, but Popeye apologized severely and was soon accepted back into the society. In December 2016, Popeye got an official welcome back from people of his kind. He said 2 men in motorbikes ambushed and robbed him as he was driving. They took his glasses, his phone, and 2 old bracelets. Still speaking on the issue, he said that wasn't the first time he had been robbed, but chose not to report the incidents. Making YouTube videos was not enough for Popeye, so he went on to write a book titled Surviving Escobar, in which he claimed he was also a victim of Escobar. He stated that killing was just his day job and that he was in constant wars with rival cartels. He claimed that as a result of these wars, he had to kill because his friends and family members were being killed. In 2017, Netflix created a show based on his book. The show was also titled Surviving Escobar. Things were going well for Popeye. His channel had over 1 million followers, but the attention started getting into his head. He went right back into his old ways, and before he knew what was happening, he was back in jail. He was convicted in 2018 on extortion charges. He tried extorting Pablo Escobar's former aide, and that didn't work out well for him. Along the line, Popeye was diagnosed with esophageal cancer, so he was taken out of maximum security prison in 2019. Unfortunately, it was too late for him. The cancer had already done much damage to multiple organs. Eventually, John Jairo Velasquez Vasquez, aka Popeye, died in February 2020 at the age of 57. While many people believed cancer was karma's way of returning the favor for the treacherous life he had lived, some others said karma had nothing to do with his death. Do you think he paid for his crimes completely, or do you think prison was not enough, so karma completed the mission? Let us know in the comments section.